Hey, I'm Alex Rackle from Board Game Co., and this is 8 games to try out if you like chess. This is a video series I do over here on the channel where I pick another game, usually a popular, slightly more well-known game, and I talk about other games that are worth giving a shot if you like that original game. And that original game today is chess, a classic that's been around for thousands and thousands of years, a game I still enjoy, although granted I don't play it all that much. But chess is a delightful game for 2 players, an abstract strategy game in which you're trying to take control of your pieces and each one moving and operating in their own way as you try to eventually checkmate the opposing king. You're trying to move your pieces around the board, trying to ensure there's never a spot the king can go where they will be free from being checkmated, from being killed on their next move. It is a game that has a combination of power, of board control, but also of strategy and manipulation, of knowing how sometimes a smaller, underwhelming force can overtake a superior force if you are able to position and play your pieces correctly in the game. It's a classic, it's been around a lot. If you haven't heard of it, if I really just explained it to you for the first time, I'm a little surprised, but hey, you do you. And this video, this is 8 games I recommend if you like chess. Now I'm going to go through these over here, starting from, well, 1 all the way through 8, starting with the first one, which is Onitama. Onitama is from Arcane Wonders. I believe it is their most sold game, which is like not always realized, but it's one of their most popular, if not their most popular title, and Onitama is basically a small abstract strategy game that plays out, if I recall correctly, on a 5x5 grid, and the general idea is you have these pieces that they don't have special moves the way chess has special moves, each piece having its own unique move. Rather, in Onitama, you're going to have your own center, like primary piece that you're trying to kill, but you have other pawns, and the pawns, the way they move, is you have 2 cards in front of you that you play a card, move your pieces, and then go ahead and draw another card from the center. There's going to be cards that are always exchanging between the players. As you play a card, you relinquish control of that move, and that card will eventually be taken by your opponent, or can be taken by your opponent, to be used against you. So it's not that your individual pieces have specific moves, rather there's a cycle, there's an economy of cards moving around as you try to play a card, move your pieces, being mindful that every time you use a special move, you're opening up the door for your opponent to use that special move back at you at some point. It is a tight game with only a handful of special moves each game. The variety of special moves you have across the core box and the expansions give you a lot of ways to try out the game, but that is basically Onitama, a 2-player abstract game that does involve unique special moves, but rather, as opposed to them being by specifically to the piece, they are instead based on the cards in play. Number 2 is going to be Yinsh. And Yinsh is actually probably more similar to Othello, but it does fall into that abstract strategy game, and it's one of the best games, if not the best game, in the Gift series. It's actually not my favorite game. That's probably going to be Tzaar, which we'll get to soon enough, in the Gift series, but I believe Yinsh is the most popular. Now, the Gift series is a series of abstract games, all of them going to be 2-player head-to-head games, all of them having the black and white pieces mostly in the game. And in Yinsh, the basic idea of the game is you're trying to move your pieces across the board to cross certain lines to set up patterns of 5 of your own color in a row. Whenever you use one of your rings to jump across the board, what you're going to do is you're going to flip all the pieces that you crossed, yours and your opponent's. So slowly but surely you're trying to create a sequence of 5 of your own color, but your opponent's mindful of that, so they're using their own rings to jump across the board and block you while setting up their own moves as well. The game starts off fairly even-handed, each player having an even number of rings, each player having the same level of board control, but as you score for one of your pieces, for one of your rows, you're going to remove a ring and you'll have 1 less ring compared to your opponent, which means they have more board power, board opportunity, but you can still go ahead and win. First player to 3 victories is going to win the game as you go through this board slowly, and every time you score your pieces, you're going to remove them from the board, again setting it up so your opponent has a slightly more of a catch-up mechanic as you go through it. This is a very tight abstract strategy game. Fairly easy to understand, fairly easy to play. There's really only one move, and then of course the rules around that move, but how you use that one move is going to determine how well you do in Yinsh. Then there's Shobu. Shobu from Smirk and Dagger Games, or possibly Smirk and Laughter Games. Shobu, I don't know, Smirk and Dagger and Smirk and Laughter, 2 brands, 2 different name companies, the same real, I guess, parent or whatnot, but basically I don't know which one Shobu's under, but Shobu's under one of those, say Smirk and Dagger. Shobu is basically a 2-player abstract strategy game that's going to have 4 boards. You're going to have 4 different boards, and it's about how your moves mirror on the different boards that's going to be the way you play the game. You see, you're trying to move your opponent's pieces from any one of the 4 boards. All you need to do. Any one of the 4 boards, you knock off their stones, you win the game. But the problem is, whenever you move a piece, you can only ever move from your side, but it's going to mirror pieces to your opponent's side. So you're trying to set up these ways to move on your board that's going to mirror to the other board, which forces you to be mindful of operating on multiple landscapes at the same time. The way you have to be mindful of being able to counter your opponent in order to set up moves to counter them, while also being mindful in order to be on the defensive at the same time, and that aspect that you constantly have levels of control in different areas, that's going to be where the intricacy of Shobu comes into play. Where again, it's not about having a variety of different moves, rather it's about the intricacy of this particular abstract experience. It's one of those games, very, very quick to learn. You don't have to teach a lot of rules, rules, but once you do understand how to play, there's a tight back and forth as players jockey for position on these 4 boards, trying to be the first one to leave their opponent scrambling. At number 4, we have Santorini. Santorini, another one on the table over here, Santorini from Roxley Games. And Santorini is a 2-player abstract game with asymmetric player powers. The basic idea of Santorini is the basic game, because you don't have to use any player powers. The basic idea of the game is you're placing little buildings onto a board. You're going to have various pieces, you move a piece, you build buildings, and you're trying to create it so that your pieces can slowly move up these different levels of buildings. There's going to be 4 levels to the building, and if you can ever move a piece all the way to the top, then you're going to win. The problem is you can go ahead and block your opponent. You can block them a variety of ways, from blocking their pawns on the board, from being able to place little capstones on top of the level 3, so you can't actually get to the level 3 of a building, and that's going to stop you from being able to win. So it's all about the positioning of learning how the various rules of elevation work, because you can only ever go up 1 level at a time. You can't jump 2 levels, or you could go down 2 levels. And so you're trying to be basically playing out in a 3D landscape that you as the players are creating. And if that weren't good enough, because it is good enough, it's a tough strategy game that really requires you thinking through how things are going to work out as you play things. If that weren't enough for you, the next level of it is the fact that you have those asymmetric player powers, where you have a whole host of cards, each player chooses one, and that changes the rules of how you play. Maybe it gives you a new victory condition, maybe it gives you a new way to build blocks, or to move across the board, or to get in your opponent's way, different things that will help you, give you different ways to play the game, so that no 2 plays of Santorini are alike, despite having a very simple, straightforward set of rules. Every game is about breaking those rules, and who can use their power best against their opponent as they try to break those rules most efficiently in their favor as you go through the game. Next up, we have Hive. Hive is going to be one of those games that every piece has its own rule abilities, how it moves. It's going to be a game of bugs. You basically have these bugs. Your goal is to surround the opponent's queen bee. You have black and white pieces with various bugs on them. The grasshopper is going to jump across pieces. The ant simply gets to move into any openings. You have the spider, which I think the spider doesn't go on top. The spider moves 3 if I recall correctly. You have a piece that goes on top of the pieces blocking them. Each piece has its own rule, and in the game, you're basically going to start putting pieces down the board, and you can either place a piece or move a piece. Your goal is to encircle your opponent's queen, but the problem is you're playing on the shared landscape where every piece connects to every other piece, and so how you move is both in order to play defensively, but as well as in order to also play offensively, putting your opponent in a way that they have to react to what you're doing, always on guard while they try to put more pieces or move things around to protect their queen, all while you try to push forward using the right combination of bugs, the right setup of abilities, so you can eventually completely encircle their queen. It's a game that takes a few plays to get the hang of how it operates, to remember all these rules. You can eventually have not a ton of rules, but each way the piece moves is not intuitive. Many of us grew up with chess, so each piece is going to be a piece that we know how it operates, versus in Hive, you're learning that for the first time. How does the spider move? How does the grasshopper move? How does the queen move? It moves 1. The queen just moves 1. You're going to have all these basic rules as far as how the pieces operate, and you're trying to work on that shared landscape in a very different way that you work in a game like chess. There's no board. The board in the game is the way the pieces touch each other. It's not about a physical table presence so much as the connection of those pieces and how they interact with each other. But Hive is another delightful strategy game. Comes with a few expansions if you want to mix up a few different new, but I think there's only 2 expansions if I recall correctly, Mosquito and Ladybug, I think. I could be wrong on that. But those will give you additional rules to be able to mix into your game of Hive. At number 6, we have Tzaar. My favorite of the gift series, of which I think there are 6, maybe 7 games, depends if you count Tamsk in the gift series. The newest one is Link, which is a combination of a variety of them. But for me, Tzaar and Yinsh are the only 2 left standing for me. They are the 2 best in the series, and Tzaar is very abstract as far as you're going to have a board over here, you're going to have your own piece, your color pieces, but the way the game works is you win either by forcing your opponent into a situation where they cannot move on the board, or alternatively, if you eliminate any one of the 3 types of pieces that they have, which means your opponent needs to be mindful of their different types of pieces, because as you're playing through the game, you're both strengthening your own pieces and taking out your opponent. In the game, you're going to be able to take out your opponent and strengthen, taking out your opponent and strengthen. Sometimes you can take out. You have 2 moves a turn, and you're trying to move in straight lines across the board, but you have to move to where a piece is. Strengthening your own pieces makes it harder for your opponent to take them out, but it means you're giving up the opportunity to be on the offensive as you go. So you're always working between building and attacking as you go through the game, and trying to set up a board state where either your opponent has no legal moves, or where they simply don't realize that you've taken out one of their 3 kinds of pieces. It is a game that is a lot of fun to play with, very tactically mean in the game, but there's a lot going on in a very small package, a very simple rule set, but a lot of strategy and interplay with the way the board is going to be played out, and with the way you're trying to be mindful of building versus destroying your opponent's pieces in Tzaar. At number 7, we have the game that is arguably the most like chess, to the point that you can literally play this on a chessboard, and that's going to be Arrima. Arrima, with a double A at the end over there, is a fascinating game that literally can be played with chess pieces on a chessboard, although I do think it's worth investing into a somewhat decent Arrima set. They're not that expensive. If you can get your hands on a decent Arrima set, you'll have, well, it's more intuitive to play it that way. But it literally uses the exact same pieces as chess. It literally plays on an 8x8 grid, although in Arrima you are playing with such a like kind of pit area. There's 2 pits on the center of the board, and your goal is to push or pull your opponents into these various pits to slowly take out their pieces. It's not a game where you simply move into a piece and take it out the way you would in chess. It's all about the board control as you move different strengths of pieces forward, as you pull different pieces, and you want to be mindful of the strength of the pieces and the way they operate to be able to try to set up the board state where you can eventually tug and push and pull your opponents into these pits on the board. It literally uses chess pieces. Well, you again could have its own unique Arrima set. It uses the same general hierarchy of the strength of the pieces, but past that, everything else is different about it. But it is a tough, tense, back and forth game of limited economy, of understanding how to utilize the pieces in your favor, of understanding where the board control and presence is as you try to push your opponents into these giant pits, which are just like dark spots on the board, as you try to win in Arrima. And then lastly, we have my favorite game on this list, which is number 8, and this is very chess-like in its feel that it's going to give you, and that is going to be Tzaar. Tzaar is a game that's from the, it's originally from the, in the name, Patrick Rothfuss in the Name of the Wind, his series of books. It's referenced in that book series, and they turned around and made it into an actual game, which I'm very happy about because I think it's really, really solid. Tzaar is an abstract strategy game where the basic principle is to connect your pieces from one side of the board to the other, from any 2 opposing sides. You don't have your side, you just have any 2 opposing sides, connect your pieces from those sides. The problem is, as the game goes, you're either placing a piece or moving a piece, similar to the way it works in Hive. But where the differences are, there's no unique abilities in the pieces, rather you're going to have this stacking mechanism, where whenever you move a piece, you can move it onto other pieces, and whenever you move a stack, you can move the entire stack, or not the entire stack, there's some rules around the grid size and the height of the stack, but you can move a bunch of pieces in the stack. And then you can drop off pieces along the way. And so setting up these epic moves where you go ahead and grab a stack of pieces, drop off a bunch of pieces, setting up either the win or double trap, that's going to be where the game starts to shine, but we're not done yet because you also have these capstones. These capstones, you can have all blocking pieces and then capstones. You can have these blocking pieces that are going to basically be pieces you can't go on top of, so they're much stronger in that sense, but they don't contribute to your win. So they're going to be a little weaker in that sense. So you're trying to be mindful of when do you place those pieces that are basically just giant blocks in the way. And then at the 3rd level of play, you introduce these capstones, which can actually knock down both your own and your opponent's pieces, which can also set you up for the win. So you can go ahead and use this as an opportunity to not just get things out of the way, but really use your own capstone to be able to knock things out, and also your own capstone counts as a piece for your victory. There's a lot going on in a very simple rule set. There's a great way to scale people up through the game as you go through it. Tzaar to me is the game that I play when I want a chess-like experience. It gives me so much going on in such a simple, accessible rule set. It's such a rewarding experience. That's going to be Tzaar. Highly recommend checking that one out. And that's what you have. These are my 8 games to check out if you like chess. If you're looking for that abstract strategy, that tense back and forth, that idea of trying to utilize a very simple constrained rule set with a very high lack of theme. Santorini is going to be the most theme you have on this table. Really just focusing on that battle of wits between 2 players back and forth as they try to outdo each other with a very, very clean and clear set of simple basic rules. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video useful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.